Hello everyone. In this session, let's look at creating a chain by considering an additional component like memory, along with the prompt template as well as the chat models that we must have already considered while creating a simple chain. So if you are looking at this particular Python script, simple underscore chain.py, we basically have leveraged both prompt template as well as chat OpenAI in order to carve out the prompt and also create the chat model object by considering both those classes. And we basically use this LCL style of creating a chain by chaining the prompt and chat model together. So we later use this chain to invoke the LLM by passing in the respective variable name value here. So we also have defined an input variable while carving out the prompt or while creating the prompt object here. So this is what on a very high level that we basically have implemented in one of our previous sessions. So this chain that we have created is completely stateless in nature. It doesn't remember, the LLM doesn't have any knowledge about the prior messages that are exchanged in between the human and AI within the same session. So within the same session, you must have asked multiple queries to the AI model or the LLM. The current question that the user is asking, the LLM doesn't have any knowledge about all the prior conversation that has occurred in this simple chain. So that is the reason why we are adding an additional component called memory, where we pass in all the conversational history while invoking the LLM. So the LLM basically has the knowledge of the complete conversation that occurred and fine tunes its response back to the user here. Okay. So let me copy this whole code and paste it in this new Python script called chainwithmemory.py. So now instead of importing prompt template, I am going to import chat prompt template and messages placeholder. Let's try to understand what messages placeholder is much later. But what exactly is the distinction between the prompt template and chat prompt template is what we'll learn now. So chat prompt template also lets you create a prompt, but it will also help you have a additional placeholder for the complete conversational history. So that's the reason why we have imported this additional class called messages placeholder. So now let me update this chat prompt template in place of prompt template here. So this basically is also enabling us to assign roles to the different messages here. And it's basically helping us for enabling this multi-turn conversation, especially when you are using these chat models like chat OpenAI. That's the key distinction between the prompt template and chat prompt template. So we need not actually provide the input variables like we have already provided here. Let me get rid of this completely. Let me also comment this out. So we'll invoke from messages method, and within parentheses, I'm just providing the list of possible objects. The first object that we are going to define here is messages placeholder. So we are forcibly placing a or forcibly providing a placeholder for the chat history here. I'm also defining a variable name called chat history, which we are later going to tie it with the memory object that we create. Okay. So once we have provided the necessary placeholder for holding all the conversation history, we'll also now provide this particular template that we already have created. So let me copy this whole template and let me provide it here within the parentheses. I'm also defining the role of this message. So this is provided by human. So human is basically asking this particular query here. So that's what we need to understand from this. Anyhow, so once this is done, so once we basically have created the prompt object, we're now looking at creating a memory object. So a memory object can be created by using this particular class called conversational buffer memory, which is basically imported from memory module. So let's import conversation buffer memory. So conversation buffer memory is a class that's going to help us return all the messages, and hence we are setting this particular parameter called return messages to true. And let's also provide a memory key. So the memory key here is tied to this chat underscore history variable that we already have defined while creating this prompt object. And that's all. So you basically have created the memory object as well as prompt. And the messages placeholder is pointing to this particular key called as chat history, which again is pointed within this conversational buffer memory instantiation. Okay. So once this is done, and we are also looking at creating the chat model object here. And instead of using LCL style of creating a chain, I am basically looking at using the traditional way of creating the chain by using this particular class called LLMChain. So I'm providing these different parameters like LLM, which is a chat model object that we already have created. Prompt is prompt. And additionally, we're also defining another component called memory. Memory is going to be the memory object that we have created in one of our previous steps. Let's also give verbose is equal to true. Sorry about the typo. So verbose is equal to true. And that's it. You basically have created the chain here now. So using this particular chain, I now go about invoking the LLM by providing what could be the respective stock name here. The stock name here is nothing but Tesla that I'm planning to investigate or planning to do my financial stock analysis upon, right? So along with this, let's also look at invoking this particular LLM again by providing a different stock name altogether. Okay. So instead of storing it in a result object, let's print out what the response could be directly. So we'll clearly understand what it is. Cool. So now I basically go about highlighting the whole code and run this code. Now you clearly understand that entering new LLM chain and human is asking about Tesla and AI is actually providing the complete relevant financial analysis, the stock analysis for this particular stock called Tesla. And you are basically getting this stock analysis report for Apple stock because that's a subsequent statement. So in order to derive the financial analysis for Apple stock, it did consider the previous history, the previous conversation history where the user asked query about Tesla and the LLM response as well. So this complete highlighted text is now being sent as a context while invoking the LLM again for a different stock called Apple. So now the LLM basically has got the complete conversational history available to it while generating a particular LLM response. So that's the whole intent behind it. So you basically can go about changing this code and ask a different question about Tesla itself. It's not necessary that you need to always ask financial analysis to be done for a different stock altogether. You simply can go about changing this complete template information to something called as user query, right? So let me provide something called user query. And you basically can provide this user query later again here instead of stock name. So the user query can be the complete text that we have defined here, right? So this is the complete text that we have defined. So what is the stock name? The stock name that we are going to consider here is going to be Tesla, right? And this should be an interpolative string because you are placing your stock name in curly braces here. Cool. And you can ask a different question altogether about Tesla in your subsequent invocation. So here the question can be, can you provide trend of revenue growth for Tesla by considering the financials? That's it. So let me run this whole code again. And now you clearly can understand that the prompt after formatting basically is going to consider the response that you get from the initial invocation here. So there's a problem here. So we basically would need to provide user query and not the stock name, which was incorrect in this particular case. So let me run this whole code again after making the correction. So here now you clearly understand that this is a complete conversation history that you are now supplying for the second question. The second question is to provide the trend of revenue growth. Here the response from the LLM is that the trend of revenue growth for Tesla over the past few years based on its financials is the following. And now you also can observe that this particular statement about the investments related to Tesla stock should be continued, and also to monitor Tesla's revenue growth, that it has been the key indicator of the company's performance and future prospects. It indeed has considered all of this prior conversation that occurred, that is the human question as well as the AI response, into account while generating the current response here. So it's totally left up to us on what problem to solve here. So you basically can customize this code to ask multiple questions about the same company, right? by considering all the conversation history being stored as a memory object, and the memory object that we in turn actually point or plug into this particular prompt here using ChatPromptTemplate class. So I believe that you have pretty much understood on how we basically have created this particular chain, this LLM chain, by leveraging three different core components within LangChain, one of which is a chat model. The other one is a prompt that is carved out from the existing wrapper chat model, which is Chat OpenAI. And we also have this memory component, which is an object that is created by instantiating this class called as conversation buffer memory, which is going to allow you to consider the complete conversation history that occurred within the same session. Okay. So in the subsequent sessions to come, we are also going to understand the clear distinction between the conversational buffer memory class and other memory classes that are available, and how this is different from rest of all of them. You need not always go about considering conversation buffer memory, but you can also leverage other class which basically considers the summary of the conversation history that occurred within the same session and use that summary rather than including all the questions and answers within the context for a particular question that you're asking to LLM. Okay, so that's all in this particular session, and thanks for watching.